I let a man that I barely knew drive me 3 hours away to his farm in the middle of nowhere while he had weapons in the back. Then I may have had a slight moment of anxiety, posted on the internet, and freaked everybody the hell out. But let's run it back momentarily, shall we? This guy, like an absolute legend, flies me out to Noosa. After a couple of days in Noosa, he asked me if I want to go out to his father's farm. Like the little dumb blonde that I am, I gleefully and willingly pack my stuff. You know me, I'm a solo traveler, you know what I'm thinking? Holiday, road trip! That is all that is going through my pretty little head. We get into the car, I've got a huge queue, I'm having a great time. I'm running the music like my life depends on.
You dumb bastard.
Does anybody else find it interesting that this guy's an absolute legend for flying her out? I mean, we all know what that means. If she's saying that he's an absolute legend, that means that he's hot, because if any average guy were to do the same thing, she would be freaking the hell out. I mean, just listen to what she said. She flew out to a place she's never been to hang out with a guy she's never met. But because this guy was physically attractive, she paid that no mind because she cares more about her plot and her fantasies more than she does about practicality. And I, for one, admire that guy's patience, because if she was running the driving playlist, that man must have been put through some absolute hell, because she strikes me as the type of woman who has absolutely god-awful taste in music. Now, there are some very specific rules when it comes to road trip playlists. One of my rules is that if you're not playing Radar Love within the first 15 minutes of hitting the highway, then I am pulling over and commandeering the phone from you. Now, granted, the rules are going to change from guy to guy, so let me know your road trip playlist rules in the comment section down below.
Now, I want to clarify, because a few people have said this in my comments. Not once did I get a bad gut feeling. It wasn't until we arrived at the farm and I actually started to think, that does tend to be helpful, using your brain, you know? So I finally learned how to use my brain at the ripe age of 22 and the cogs start turning. I start to think of all the elements at hand. 1, I'm in a different state. 2, I cannot drive the car that he drove up. 3, I am 3 hours away from any sense of civilization. 4, there are weapons in the back. To address another person's comment, they were like, oh, anything could be a weapon if you use it right. These were literal weapons.
Wow. That's amazing.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say when she's referring to literal weapons, I'm assuming she's talking about firearms. Now, I'm not about to fault any Aussies for not having a lot of knowledge about firearms, because I understand that firearms culture down there is significantly different than any other place in the world. But if you ask any farmer, they'll be quick to tell you that a firearm is an absolute necessity. Now, there aren't a whole lot of farms out in Sector Sigma, but even I know that. Now, judging from this woman's accent, I am going to assume that she has zero knowledge when it comes to firearms, and that's perfectly fine. The only exposure a lot of folks get to firearms comes from TV, movies, and video games. But with that comes the stigma that any firearm they see is an automatic assumption that those guns are being used against people. But that's not really the issue here. The issue is that she did no vetting of this guy whatsoever. She didn't even know that he came from a farm family, which just really proves everything we already know. Thinking is not this broad strong suit, but then again, I really don't think she has any of those.
So now it's not my gut feeling, it's just my anxiety. I start overthinking. And I turn around and I tell him this. Please don't off me and throw me in the back of this Land Cruiser. And I feel so bad because he felt so sad that he was freaking me out so much. But it was just my anxiety. I hadn't had one bad gut feeling up until that point. So we spent like 3 days there. I had a great time. I was enjoying being in nature, disconnecting, connecting with a new friend. The update is I'm alive. He's a fucking awesome guy. And I have zero regrets. Except maybe ghosting you on the internet.
That's nothing to be proud of, Rusty.
Woman, be serious for a second. Even if you did have a bad gut feeling, you still would have gotten into the Land Cruiser with the guy because you found him attractive. Chad will get a ton of leeway where the members of the illustrious bottom 95% club won't. Hell, if anything, if this guy did seem nefarious, you probably would have went anyways because it would have been exciting. You're acting like your life is just one big party, that it's full of thrills and fun and excitement, and at no point do you ever stop and think that the world might actually be a dangerous place. Well, scratch that. All you do is assume that the world is a dangerous place, but that's only when you're dealing with members of the illustrious bottom 95% club. But because this man wasn't a member, that's why it was so fun and exciting and why you're dancing around like a little idiot. So with all that being said, I'm gonna give her a 50-50 shot that she's actually gonna see this guy again, because she's gonna get bored with him quickly. She lives her life for 2 reasons. One is the thrill and excitement of chasing after hot guys, and the second is a complete disregard for her own safety.
Your intellect is as weak as your dollar. Failure is your destiny. You disrespect yourself and your nation. You are made of stupid.
want to take a few seconds here to give a shout out to the members of the Bounty Board over on Patreon for their support of this channel. Gentlemen and gents, the Intergalactic Space Goblin Plomacard, all hail, is shining with pride and glory as he sits on his magnificent front porch with a steaming hot cup of coffee and a freshly cooked donut, beaming with pride that there are fantastic gents out there in the universe. All hail! And if you're interested in supporting the channel, check out the Bounty Board over on Patreon, where for $5 a month, you can get access to exclusive content you're not going to find on YouTube. I post twice a week, and the link is in the pinned comment down below if you want to help support the channel.
I'm 31 and I don't feel like I'm necessarily old enough to be giving real advice, but I would like to say this if you're in your 20s. It is so fucking important you realize that your 20s are not old. My God, please. 23, not old. 25, not old. 28, not old. You have so much time. And the one thing that I wish I could do differently is not think I was fucking old when I wasn't. I thought I had no more time at 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Every one of those are fucking ages.
Because I want a baby.
Well, I guess that's just a matter of perspective there, Corporal Crazy Pants. Because from a reproductive standpoint, yeah, you are getting kind of old after 25. Human beings are just like any other animals. We were put on this earth to reproduce. The biggest difference being that animals are smarter because they can successfully reproduce and you won't. And from that reproductive standpoint, you don't have nearly as much time as you think. You just like to think that way because that's what you were told to think. I know this is going to be a little bit difficult for you, but let's think about this logically for a second. You're trying to tell yourself that you have plenty of time in your 20s, and yet you wasted those 10 years and you're sitting there freaking out, which just goes to show that you're completely wrong. You don't actually have a lot of time in your 20s. And you really wouldn't be having this problem if you just followed the basic biological pair bonding rules that have been established for centuries. But you obviously didn't. You spent your 20s chasing after cheap bottles of wine and even cheaper thrills. And now you want another generation of young women to share in your terrible life decisions. Good going there, sister. Great advice.
I thought it was too late, and now I'm 31, and I'm not gonna say I haven't tried to do the things I want to do in my life and I haven't succeeded in some things. I have, and I'm proud of myself for a lot of things. But there are some things that I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was too old 10 years ago. You need to realize you have so much time. Whatever you want to do it. I don't care who you have to leave behind in your life. They will come back or someone new will come.
Remember, your biological clock is ticking.
Maybe I'm wrong on this one, but I don't think advising young, impressionable women to leave their significant others in order to chase Chad is a smart idea. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Now, if you're talking about your career, well then, good for you. You put a lot of time and effort into a job you won't be able to stand 5 years from now. Congratulations, your trophy's in the mail. I mailed it third class from Indonesia. You should be getting it around the ripe old age of 80. But this just begs the question. Who are you talking to? Like, who do you think needs to hear this? Do you honestly think there's just somebody that's scrolling through TikTok is gonna randomly come across your video and say, you know what? This lady who's screaming and clapping and swearing is making a lot of sense. I'm going to uproot my life, break up with my boyfriend, and go on that 6-month backpacking trip through Europe so I can really find myself. I mean, honestly, I kind of pity you if you feel like you have that kind of power over people, but even more, I don't think it's fair for you to be projecting your regrets onto other people who are just minding their own business.
I have met some of my favorite people in this world this year at 30, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, some 10 years ago, right? You are going to continue to meet new people. You are going to continue to have new love, new relationships, new jobs, new opportunities. You are not too old. That's what I have to say on that. La, la, la. And also, if someone could yell that at me now, that would be great. Thank you.
No.
Ah, the plot thickens. Okay, so you're not actually trying to help people, you're just trying to get people to help you through your freak out. Well, that dog ain't gonna hunt here, sister. You are too old and it's far too late for you. Now, the first thing that pops into my head when I hear this freak out is you were probably living with your parents and scrolling through social media on a Friday night because all of your friends had better things to do with their significant others when you found out that your ex-boyfriend from high school probably got married or is probably celebrating the birth of his first child. You probably started freaking out because you left him in order to go on a healing journey to become your most true and authentic self, and that led to a decade's worth of binge drinking and one-night stands that led absolutely nowhere. All of those people, your favorite people, want nothing more to do with you than to hang out every once in a while, and you know this. So instead of actually looking back on your life and accepting that you made some mistakes, you're going to deny it, freak out, and then hope that people on TikTok will feel sorry for you. Well, we don't, sister. You brought all this on yourself, but you are too old and too stubborn to change.
You blew it. Capiche?
What I'm about to tell you is a little difficult to open up about. It makes me very vulnerable because it's a bit of a sensitive topic, and to others it might not be sensitive at all, so you might be like, why? So please don't shame me or be rude. So I get triggered when my partner plays video games, and here's why. Reason number one, I think this triggers me, is because 2 of my past relationships have been with boyfriends that spent a majority of their free time playing video games. One of them, for example, I would be over hanging out with him and he would just be playing video games for hours, and I would be sitting there so bored just watching him play for seriously like 4 to 5 hours, maybe more.
Oh, poor you.
Wow, that is just so stunning and brave of you to open up about your irreparable trauma because you dated a guy who would play video games instead of take you out on dates. Your story about how you bravely took on that trauma of watching your guy play video games for 6 hours while you were bored is just, man, that is just so brave of you. I mean, it's not like you could have said anything to him or you could have just broken up with him and moved on with your life. No, you decided to be a martyr of time and just suffered while he sat there and played video games like the devil that he truly is. Because as we all know, communication is a one-way street, which is solely the man's responsibility. And you are in no way being overdramatic when you say that men playing video games trigger you because it reminds you of boredom. Just, oh man, I am just so captivated by this brave story. I think someone should make a movie about her life. I mean, this is just compelling stuff, and considering that the Academy loves the smell of their own farts, I think we got a nomination for Best Picture if we write a screenplay on it.
Another one of them, I didn't really have to watch him play much because he was always playing at his house when I wasn't there, but I was working all the time to try to build up a savings, and he did not have a job and lived with his parents and would just play video games nonstop. So I kind of felt like I'm working for my future, and which I hope is our future, and like working so hard and you're not working at all because you're just playing video games. And then he answered with, I could become a professional video game player and make a ton of money. And at the time I was just like, this is not realistic at all. He's never become a professional video game player. I know there are many. Second reason I think it triggers me is the sound, the violence. I'm probably neurodivergent. I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but my mom has, my little brother has. I clearly have ADHD, and all of the sounds and everything really, like, it makes me like have to like rub my neck and be like, oh, I can't stand this.
What has that got to do with it?
Well, with a self-diagnosis like that, who needs medical professionals? ADHD affects literally millions of people across the globe. But that doesn't mean that video games are linked to some type of deep-rooted trauma. I mean, just look at you. You're trying to come up with reasons why you don't like them. And you come up with these vague notions like the sound and the violence, as if all video games are violent. You can't actually bring up one type of traumatic memory here, and yet you still claim that they trigger you. Now, I get it. There's millions of people out there who have ADHD, and they end up playing video games a lot longer than they should have. It's been known to happen. But I'm failing to see how having undiagnosed ADHD has anything to do with you constantly choosing bad boyfriends. Now, if this guy is spending 5 hours a day playing video games, yeah, I would say that's concerning. But come on, lady. Triggering? I think you're being a little bit overdramatic here. Just admit that you don't like it when guys play video games and be done with it. You wouldn't be the first, and you won't be the last. Modern women hate it when men play video games.
Thirdly, my partner has a very addictive and passionate personality, which I love this trait in him. It makes him, very ambitious, and when he's into something, he goes all in. But that trait towards some things that can be negative can also be bad. So if he is in a phase where he's playing video games, he can stay up really late playing the video game, and then I see a lack of sleep, and then the next day if we have plans, he's tired and doesn't want to do the plan. So it just affects the relationship. And I find this hard to talk about in a relationship because I don't want to be a controlling girlfriend and be like, you can't play video games. But pretty much I just don't want to be around it. Like, close your door, play in your bedroom where I don't have to see it.
Liar, liar, liar. Woman, could you be any more vague? Judging from what you're saying, this guy does not spend a whole lot of nights binge playing video games. You're not bringing up any type of factual event that's happened in which him playing too many video games made him not want to do plans the next day, because if it happened, you would be complaining about that nonstop. So it stands to reason that this guy does not play video games nearly as long as you want us to believe. Now, I'm not about to say that binge playing doesn't happen. Ask anybody who's played Fallout New Vegas and they'll tell you that it's an immersive walking simulator and you end up spending a lot more time playing than you realize. But what I find telling is how you say that you don't want to hear him play video games and just to play it with the door shut. Which leads me to believe that you're not really concerned of him binge playing video games every once in a while, and it's more like you don't want him playing those games at all. I will give you credit instead of nagging at him to stop that you just want him to shut the door so you can have some peace and quiet. Fair enough. But come on, lady, stop being dramatic over the fact that your boyfriend has hobbies that don't include you. And that's going to do it for today's video, gentlemen and gents. And as always, if you find that my particular brand of comedy is bringing you to the brink of laughter, then why don't you scroll on down and click that like and subscribe button, ring the notification bell, leave a couple of comments, and make sure to share this video so we can give the good old-fashioned middle finger to the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much for checking out the new video, gentlemen and gents, and until next time, peace out, homies.